issues, is we know that Gavin Newsom has changed his narrative, right? He probably understands, and maybe we need to praise him, to be honest, although a lot of people don't want to praise Gavin Newsom on anything. And quite honestly, his policy in California have been just horrific. I mean, that state is run down badly. But he probably wants to run for president in the next 4 years, and he's trying to clear up some loose ties, pulling away from different from different policy takes that he may have had when it comes to transgender issues. Well, Christine Quinn on CNN went off at Gavin Newsom's shift in transgender debate, as she calls it, disgusting. So let's watch this video. Let's react to it from CNN on YouTube.
Gavin Newsom is searching for an identity that he thinks will be sellable to run for president of the United States. And you know what? That's disgusting. If you want to have a position that I disagree with, let's have a conversation. But to shop out your position, to put you in what you believe is a better position, no one is going to buy that. They're going to see it as raw politics, and I have no respect for that at all. It's like, it's Tuesday. What Gavin Newsom are we going to get?
But Speaker Quinn, I don't disagree with what you just said, but isn't that kind of par for the course in the world of politics?
I hope
don't
not.
Don't their views evolve? I mean, I believe when President Obama ran for president of the United States, he was against gay marriage, and during his term of the presidency, it evolved, and he was for it.
Gavin Newsom has historically been one of the most significant allies of the LGBT community there had been. To do this kind of a shift isn't an evolution. There's a difference between an evolution, which I support. You can say that about a lot of people, Chuck Schumer, Hillary Clinton. This isn't that. This is a 180-degree flip, clearly for political reasons.
I don't want to steal Scott's thunder here, but one of the reasons that Gavin Newsom may have switched is because of the polling on this issue. 25% of Americans agree that trans women should be allowed to participate in female sports, but 75% disagree. The politics, the public opinion on this is in a completely different place.
I agree.
And one more thing, and I'll let you get in, but the accommodation that they announced in California seems to acknowledge a sense of unfairness in the process.
It's deeply unfair, and for all these parents that have little girls who work very hard in all these sports, whether it's track and field or the softball situation that's going on in Minnesota right now, where they've got a team that's dominating the rest of the teams because they have a trans pitcher on the team. If you're a parent of one of these little girls who worked their whole life to get to something like this, only to be aced out at the end by a completely unfair competition, it must be deeply frustrating. And politicians have a responsibility, A, to listen to their people, but B, to take real stands. And the true best real stand here, and it also happens to be very popular, is just to say it's fundamentally unfair, and it's deeply unfair to women. It's unfair to girls. It's unfair to women in these sporting events who are being knocked off of podiums. Have been happening for years. Trump took a strong stand on it, and a lot of people rallied around him, and it's because the American people agree.
I just want to say this, and you know, my background is in sports. I'll start with that. I don't want to scare the people, as you said earlier. I don't want people to think that this is truly an epidemic, that young boys are competing in young women's sports and young girls' sports. These cases are few and far in between. They don't happen that often. I agree that we need to understand what is happening and we need to get ahead of it. And oddly enough, I agree with you. Scott, oddly enough, I agree with you, which is
Why is it odd?
because I don't normally agree with you.
Hold on, let's let her finish.
The science behind this hasn't been studied enough or talked about enough for us to make a real full opinion. I do agree, girls' sports are for girls.
What science? What science? What are we talking about? The science is the fact is a fact. There's nothing to need to be tested. You don't need to get a million mice together or a million monkeys together to test this out on. You know, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. A girl is a girl and a boy is a boy. What needs to be tested?
Wait.
I do. Hold on.
She's listening.
Okay.
Just
I have a
give her a
question.
second to finish,
You
please.
stop, friend.
Just give her a second to finish. Go
And
ahead, Karen.
my whole point is this. I don't want us to act like there are a ton of trans athletes trying to compete in little girl sports, women's sports, girls sports, whatever the case may be. That is not the case. And we know that. It's minuscule. And what's going to happen?
But I did
is,
hear you say you believe that girls'
I
sports
think I
should
100
be for
girls.
biological.
Biologically, I think there's an unfair advantage. They talk about the fairness issue. We go back and forth with, Gavin Newsom. Who is he today? I agree. Perhaps he did evolve and he did change his mind. But public opinion, if you ask people in the quiet corners how they feel about it, they don't either want to discuss it or they understand that it is unfair. There is an unfair competitive edge, and that needs to be addressed.
I want to stand up for the trans kids. Now, what do you do? Isn't this a good compromise? Where they're saying, look, you can't participate.
I don't know.
You can't tell those kids, well, now you
Arthur,
just
we're
can't
not going to solve that in 3 minutes. What I'm
but I
saying
think
is
this is a good
everybody can't
compromise.
just come to. We don't know what a good compromise is.
One other
we don't
thing,
have enough
just to
information for
just
that.
to Arthur's point, it bears repeating that we're talking about kids here.
Yes.
Okay. This
Correct.
AB Hernandez is a minor.
A child.
A child.
And she's been
she's
groomed by
been
adults.
Yeah, she has been the subject not just of intense scrutiny in her community, but the president of the United States
And
is
that's the
threatening
humanity.
one child.
One child who is 16
in the state
years
of California.
old, and it's not fair.
It's
You
not threatening a
forget
child.
Threatening the school district over
a
this
child.
one child.
And I don't think
is the
that people
question.
are intelligent enough to realize the humanity of a 16-year-old child being bullied and talked about and protested. Understand, you may not like the policy, but where's the humanity of it all?
I'm in her favor. I think she should be able to participate, but she shouldn't be able to knock someone off the podium. And California, I'm sorry, I'll give you. They should be complimented. They're trying to find a compromise, letting the child participate, but not take the child that Scott referred to, who's been training all her life, to get thrown off the podium because someone who's biologically different and has an advantage won. So they're trying to figure it out.
There are, by reports from California, thousands of student athletes in California. That makes sense. There are documented single-digit number of trans athletes. And this one particular athlete, at the meet right before this one, was screamed at by adults in the stands, booed, jeered, whatever you think.
Threatened, all the things.
We have to remember these are children and that adults should be setting the tone. You want to debate this?
I agree.
Debate this, but don't yell at this person.
Exactly, at a child.
I think adults should set the tone, and they should not put these kids in this situation. Unfortunately, you said this hasn't been studied enough to know that, look, we've got millions of years of study. Men and women are different, and that's why it's unfair to put boys in girls' sports. We don't need to have any more biological studies. It is fundamentally unfair.
But do you see, genuinely curious, any accommodations that are reasonable? You have a 16-year-old who wants to participate in sports. In your mind, is there any way that can happen that is fair?
Of course.
How?
Have the people participate with their own biological sex. Boys in boys sports, girls in girls sports. It's worked for a very long time in this country.
But it's not that simple anymore, Scott. That's where we are. So what do you do when it's
simple
not?
to 80% of the country.
But it's not that anymore. So what do you do with the 20%? Do we ignore them?
Yeah,
do
pretty
we
much. I mean, it's an 80-20 issue.
Scott,
100%.
everybody's ignoring that.
And you just said it was a minuscule number.
It's
If
a
it's minuscule, why
number. It's
why
a
do we have to
minuscule number.
upend
We don't have to. The reason why
millions
I
of
said it
people
was
for
a
a
minuscule
handful?
number, Scott, was because I don't think it's fair that you're scaring people at home thinking that boys are trying to compete in girls' sport by the droves and that this is going to take over and you were scaring people at home. It's just not happening, Scott.
But this
It's
is the
not
biggest.
happening.
This is like the most competitive track meet
Christine,
in the
can I
country.
ask you
Scott, stop.
one final question before we go? I mean, for the Democratic Party, I mean, Gavin Newsom made this shift. I mean, I'm not even sure he really wanted to do it in that moment. He was sort of cornered into it. What should the Democratic Party's position be on this issue that played a fairly key role in the last election and where public opinion is pretty lopsided?
Yeah. Look, on human and civil rights issues, you always have a period of time when people are not supporting wherever you're moving. Democrats, we shouldn't move away from positions we've long held, like support of my community, the LGBT community. We shouldn't run away from that. That's not why we lost. We lost because we weren't strong enough fighters, because we didn't have a message that was compelling to middle-class Americans who were feeling a squeeze every day. We need to stand up and articulate a message about how we're going to make people's lives better, and we're not going to do that in a way that's believable if we run away and abandon communities that we've stood with for decades.
Or just or just be honest about what you feel.
Yeah.
Say what it is. Make it plain. If you don't think it, then say I don't want it.
Wow, so hard. So hard to listen to in a lot of ways. This is plain and simple. Men are men, women are women. And you don't need 100 years of study And if it is a minuscule, as Scott was saying, if it is that is if such a small of an issue, why do we have to make adjustments to for certain people? Why do we have to make for such a small amount of minuscule amount of people, according to the journalist next to him to his left? So why? So make up your mind. You can't have it both ways. If it's such a small issue, then why are we making all these radical changes to sports? And this goes beyond, by the way, beyond sports. Yeah, we can talk about sports all we want to, but then this leads to also allowing, or correlates with allowing men in women's bathrooms anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country. Do we want that? Do we want that? Do we want men going in and do we want this? I'm tired of these unisex bathrooms where anybody can just go anywhere that I see everywhere. I feel uncomfortable actually going in where women are being. To be honest with you, this all of this stuff correlates. By the way, it's not just about a minor. And if it is, listen, the solution is either have a transgender sport or these transgender athletes need to compete with their biological sex, plain and simple. There's nothing else to be said, and that we got to come on, man. It's stop making it harder than what it is. I agree. This shouldn't be a big deal, but according to some people, they just don't want to let it go.